Okay. Yeah. So basically, I was supposed to have created the content for this, but I wanted us to have a live session where I'll be able to explain these concepts to you, which is about CSS positions, right? So we're going to start off by talking about CSS positions. We'll explain every single one of these positions, and we'll work with some examples, right? So first off, I'm going to simply create a boilerplate, right? I'm just going to call this this is main.css. So let's name it main.css. CSS. Okay. All right. And the next thing I'm going to do right now is to just create a very simple div. I'm going to call this parents. And then I'm going to create another div, and I'm going to call this child, right? So now I have the parent and the child. Inside the style, I'm going to put the style in here. When we're done, I can move it out of this place so that we can do everything from here. So right here, I'm going to have style, and I'm going to have parents and child. So I'm going to set the color of the parents, background color. Background. So let's work with black. Then let's work with background. Let's work with a height of 300 pixels, right? I think that would work. 350. And let's work with the height, the width of 350 pixels. While for this one, let's use 150 by 150. Okay, or maybe 100 by 100. Okay, so this should be white. All right, nice. Or let's use something different. Okay, so we have black and yellow. And as you can see, we have the parent and the child right here. I'm going to refresh this page so you see what we have, right? And I'm sure you know how I came up with this. So very simple. We have the parent class, we have the child class. What we're trying to look at is, to explain the various CSS positions and how they work, right? So by default, and this is something you should always know, by default, every element works with the static, right? So this is the default. This is the default. So every item you create in here works with the static. I want to quickly take up this, margin and padding that we have under the universal selector. I'm just going to say padding, give me 0, margin, give me 0, then box sizing, border box. Okay, so this is going to take off all those default spacing that we are seeing over there. The next thing I'm going to do right now is let's go ahead and talk about relative, right? Because this is where the main thing starts from. Basically, everything by default is static, and now we should be talking about relative. So what does it mean for something to be relative? Basically, when you say an element is relative, so if you are a co-host, please admit the people in the waiting room. Always remember to do that, okay? So if when you say something is relative, basically you are saying that particular item is relative to the parent, which is in this case, let me refresh, which is in this case the parent of this is our parent item, right? Which is this item you are seeing right here. So please, can you guys hear me? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me, please.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, all right. So yeah, so when you say an item is relative, basically what you're saying is that that particular item is relative to the parent container. In this case, this item, this black item we have right here, this black div is basically what we call parent, right? But it also has a parent, right? And what is the parent here? The parent here is the body itself, right? The body itself. So what I'm going to do is to simply say we have the body, and the body background of let's say line. Okay, so this is the body. This is what we call the parent in our own implementation. and this is the child, right? Okay, so one thing you're going to notice here, let me show you. If we say position relative, if we say position relative, and then we use, so the moment you use these positions, relative, absolute, sticky, and fixed, it's actually possible for you to use the top, left, bottom, and right. So if I put in the top, or let's say I put in the maybe the bottom, let's open the bottom 0, let's just say 0px. So if I refresh this, so you notice something. Basically nothing is happening here, and I'm going to explain that shortly. Now we are still working with relative. I'm going to do something similar here, right? Just to show you position relative. I'm going to say let's say top. Let's say 50px. Yeah. So what I'm trying to explain to you right now is, we have two items, and this was the first item we created. I think I made a mistake here. This should have been top. Let's use the. Okay, so let's do it this way. Okay, so basically there was a mistake here initially, right? When I said 0px. So basically I have the parent item, which is this black item you're seeing here, and I set the top to 50px. Now this is relative to the body. As I told you earlier, this is relative to the body because the body is actually the parent of this item you're seeing right here, right? And then for the yellow item, or for the yellow div, the black div happens to be its own parent. So this right here is the parent of this, right? The body that has the lime color is the parent of the div with the black color, and then the div with the black color is the parent of the div with the yellow color. Now you need to understand, when we actually choose to use relative and absolute, right? So they both work together. In most cases, you would want to use the two of them, and I think it's good for you to understand why you should make an item relative. So basically, in most cases you will make an item relative because you want to have an absolute item that would or a sticky item, right, that would take the relative parent as a base. And when I mean a base, I'm going to show you. Let's assume that the parent right here is not relative. So I'm going to refresh this. Okay, so the parent item at this point in time is not relative, but the child is absolute. And this is going to lead us to understanding what the absolute actually means. So now I'm going to simply say I have a top of let's say 100 pixel, just to change the position. Now, basically, in order for you to really understand what is going on here, this item that you're seeing right now is no longer within this black div. And in order to prove that to you, I am simply going to say left, and let's say 400 pixels. I want this to really, all right. So now you see, this particular item is basically just floating on the surface. I mean, it's basically just floating on the surface. It has no, no base parent, just like what we had earlier. There's no base parent for this. It's just floating on the surface right now because it has no parent. And another example that you can use to understand what I'm trying to explain, I would show you. I'm going to change this implementation, but I wanted to use this sample to show you that you have a parent, you have a child. This is also a parent, but this is the body, of course, so we're not really looking into that. This item you're seeing right now is absolute to the relative parent. At this point, there is no default relative parent, so it is considering the base, which is the body, to be the parent, right? Because it cannot see this as a parent anymore unless the parent then has relative. Now that is just a quick example, but I'm going to make this even clearer so you can understand. What I'm going to do this time around is I'm going to have multiple divs here, and I'm going to call this div 1, probably div 1, and then that makes sense, right? Okay, let's call this 1, just like this. Okay, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to say 2, 3, and 4. All right, so now I'm going to create something similar. Let's take up the body. Now I'm going to call 1. Of course, this is a class. I'm going to call. I'm going to say the background. The background is let's just say yellow. Okay, so that's for 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's rename 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is going to be blue. This is going to be green. This is going to be black. Okay. All right. So for the first item, I'm going to set this as position. I'm going to set this relative. All right. So now we're just working with the relative item, right? Let's refresh to see what we have. Okay, we need to set the width and height. So let's use 150px and the height of 50px. So do same thing here, and same thing here. All right, so let's refresh. So basically, we can decide to just use this once. All we have to do is just simply create one simple div, right? Just like this. And this would apply to all. So always remember that whenever you can optimize the amount of CSS you're writing, always try as much as possible to do that. So the first item is the relative item right now. Let us set the top to 40 pixels. So let's refresh. Now take a look at what is happening. This is relative to the parent, which in this case is our body, right? We were able to move this item out of the main position. This was the position. So let's take it back to 0 so you can see what I mean. This is the position, right? Now we're able to move it out of the position, by 20 pixels, and you have an empty space, right? Which means it is relative to this parent, but its position is still maintained. The default position is still maintained, even though you have adjusted this using the top or the left. So we can also say left, and we have 20 pixels. So you see that the initial space still remains, the initial space is still there, right? Nothing really happened to that initial space. We are able to adjust this because it is relative to the parent, but nothing is really wrong with that initial space that you created. Now, the next one I'm going to show you right now is that of absolute, right? So for number 2, I'm going to simply say position absolute. All right. Now, the moment I make this absolute, one thing you notice here is that it is off the screen. And your question might be, okay, what is happening? Where did it go? Where did the yellow div go? Actually, it is covered by this blue. The blue item now is covering the yellow item, and the blue item is the absolute item. Why did this item shift? Why did we not retain the space, the initial space? And of course, the yellow item is still there. When I take off the position, you see the yellow item is back to its position. But this item left the original position, and the original position was to be in between the green and yellow. Now, by setting this item to absolute, it left its position, and its position was filled up immediately. That is simply because the absolute position, takes this item off, off the position, that it was containing, right? It takes it off the position completely, and these other items that we have on the background cannot even detect, or see that there was something, or there is even something, on top of it at this moment, right? So this item is just floating, on the screen, and you end up using the absolute item when you have a parent container to work with. I'll show you another example very soon, but the major thing I want you to understand from here is when it comes to working with relative, the position is still maintained, even though you can move it around, right? It is relative to the parent, though its position is still maintained. For the absolute, you take it off, once you apply the absolute position, it goes off the space, and something fills up that space. So it's just floating at this moment, and we can decide to do things like we can say right, and this would automatically see what happens right now. It actually gave that spacing on the right, but no longer on the top, of course. I mean, this you don't use right and left together, so that's a mistake. So let's do right here. Okay. So you see what is going on right now. So because I used right 20 pixels, it moved this item to the right, with just a space of 20 pixels, right? These items are, huge because I increased my display type. So I increased my resolution. So let me do that again, just to ensure that you are able to see this properly. All right. So that is for absolute. And now I think we should be asking ourselves, let me apply this again right here. I'm going to take it back to left so that we can see everything together on the screen. So, you can see. Let's use 40 here. So that's yeah. So now you can see that this is the relative item. The space is still here, right? the absolute item, the space was removed automatically. It no longer has a position on these items. These items are still static. That's why they are stacked on top of each other. The next thing I'm going to simply do here right now is to try the next option we have, which is fixed, right? So let's go ahead and set position to fixed, and I will explain how the fixed item would work. So basically, when you have an item set to fixed, I'm also going to apply the top and left. This time around, I'm going to use 150 and also 150. So if I go ahead to refresh, now you see what is happening here. This item on this position is completely fixed, which means even if I scroll, nothing is going to happen. It's going to remain there. And I can't scroll right now, so I have to add some extra level of content so that we can scroll through that page. I'm going to simply add a bunch of lorem ipsum text, dummy text. Okay, so now we have some dummy text. Let's refresh and let's see. You see, we can scroll, and while we're scrolling, you see that this item still remains there, and it's fixed, right? Maybe that position is not the best, so let's just use 100. Okay, I'm going to refresh again, reduce this a little bit. So you see that this item is fixed, and basically nothing is happening here. It's just static in that position. Where would you find yourself using something like this? I would show you an example, but let's assume you want to implement like a chat button that would sit at this corner here. We can simply do that by adjusting. Let's adjust the width and height. Let's say we have 100 pixels by 100 pixels. This is going to override what we have already. So if I refresh, we have that size. Next, I'm simply going to say bottom. I'm going to use a bottom of, let's just work with 10 pixels. Let's see what we have. If I refresh, okay, nice. And we're going to set right, of 10 pixels as well. So this is going to come down to this side, correct? And finally, we're going to set the border radius, to give us 50%, 50%, just like this. Okay, so now we have this kind of fab icon. I think it's called a fab in Android. Like the WhatsApp chat icon that you usually see right there. So something similar. And you see it's static. So even if we continue to scroll, it's going to remain in that position. That is what is meant by fixed. When you say something is fixed. Okay, so we added a bunch of lorem ipsum text, but you notice that everything is in one side basically. The reason for this is because by default, we already set the width and the height of our div, right? So if we take off that width, then we can have something like this, right? So let's just leave it this way so that we can have a stretched amount of content so that we can scroll basically, right? So I'm going to add 3 other lorem ipsum text so that this can be longer. And the reason why I'm making this longer is because I want to show you the last option, which is sticky, and I'm going to explain how that would work. So we have the fourth item. All right, so for the fourth item, what I'm basically going to do here is to say display, sorry, not display, but position, and sticky. Okay, so when working with sticky, of course, it's a good idea to have a relative parent, and I will explain that to you shortly as well. But if I go ahead and refresh this, you see that nothing is basically happening here, and that's because we don't really have like a relative parent just yet. So instead, I'm going to, in order to make this really sticky, let me go ahead and add top. Okay, let's do it this way. Let's see if this would give us what we want. So we have position sticky, we have top, and we have left. Okay. Okay, so this is not working. So basically, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead, to add a relative parent, and let's see if that solves the problem. So what I'm going to do is to work with the parent div right now. So which is the parent? I'm going to set the parent right here. Let's do that. Okay, position. Set this to relative. Okay. Let's see if this would solve our problem. Okay, so this is not solving the problem just yet. Okay, I need to be very sure why we're having that problem. Okay, so I am definitely getting something wrong. So instead, what I'm going to do is to quickly open up the MDN. So let's take a look at that together on the browser. Okay, so basically the idea of working with sticky, I'm opening that on the browser right now so you can see it. The idea of working with sticky is that, you are able to get to a position where it becomes fixed, once you are about to leave the viewport, right? The viewport that you're looking at. So let's click on this. So this item is currently sticky and it has top of 20, of course. So I am surprised. Did I make a mistake here? So we have with class of 4, position sticky. We have the top, okay. Let's go back again. Okay. Okay, so this is quite weird, but I'm sure the mistake is coming from me, of course. So someone is in the waiting room, please admit the person. So we have a position of, okay, this is absolute, this is relative, that is fine. So for sticky, to see the effect of sticky, okay, select the position sticky and scroll this container. Okay, the elements will scroll along with its container until it's at the top of the container. So the element will scroll along with its container. Okay, let me go ahead and yeah. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to set. We have a base container, right, which is the parent. We have a base container, which is the parent. I'm going to just leave this here. Class of 4. And okay. So now that we have that size, let me add more option text so that we can scroll. Okay. So I think I see why we're having that problem. So basically, probably it's, yeah, I would test this once again to be sure why we're having that problem. Okay. So I think the major reason why we're having that problem is because we did not have, the height and the width set properly. So, but I'm going to try something once again. I'm going to set 150px in here so that this can come down. And I think this is still, let's do left of 100 pixels. Okay, so this is actually working. Like, I mean, it's sticky right now, but the problem there is I also need to probably create a container and use that container to really represent this item. So it's sticky, but it's working like a fixed item because it's basically working with this particular width and height, right? So what I'm going to do is to first bring back the previous examples so that we don't have to, so that I can share this with you once we're done with the workshop. But yeah, let me bring back the previous examples. Okay, so now we have the previous examples. What we're going to do is to create a new document. I'm going to call this sticky. Okay, and I am basically doing this so that I can use one single item right here to explain things, to you. So I'm going to call this sticky, and then we're going to make this. Yeah, let's take off 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we're going to call this sticky. So we have the sticky item right now with the width and height. Let's remember to put that the width and height right here. So I'm going to say 50px by 50px. I'm going to take up this D. Okay, and now, okay, fine. So this is what we have, and this is what our file, our page looks like. So I'm going to call sticky.html. All right, so this is exactly what our page looks like right now. This page is not scrollable, but in order to make this page scrollable, maybe the easier way to just do this is to go ahead and set the body of this page, I'm going to set a height of 150 VH so that this can scroll. Okay, good. So now this can scroll. As you can see, that sticky item, it was sticky up to some point until it began to scroll, and I would explain why we are having that issue right there. So let's take off these items that we created initially, and what I'm going to do instead is to take off this parent as well. Take off this div. So we're simply going to work. We're simply going to work with. We're simply going to work with the body, right? So the body is expected to be, like 150 VH, which is the view height. Remember that. Yeah, so we're going to now add, that's our parent that we're going to work with. So I'm going to call this the sticky parents. Okay, this is basically what we use for things like navigation bar at times when we want it to be sticky at the top. So the sticky parent, what I'm going to do is to create that parent, right here. I'm going to set a height of 100, so that when you scroll past that 100, then it can, automatically do what it needs to do. So we have a height of 100. So let's leave it this way. Let's refresh. So now you see that particular item is sticky, up to the point where it's probably, let's say, have 200 or 250. Okay, so you see that it's sticky up to the point where it goes out of 150 VH, 100 VH, sorry, or up to the point where the parent goes out of 100 VH. In order to be sure, if we set the background color right here on the parent to yellow, and I refresh this page, so now you can see we have the yellow parent, right? Once this parent goes out of scope, it goes out with the item, but it is sticky within the parent, and that's the major thing that I think we should understand. It is sticky within the parent. In order to try this again, I'm going to move the sticky item, down to 200 by 200. So moving it 200 by 200. Oh, sorry, that was the size instead of the position. So yeah, this is what we need to do: 200 by 200, top and left. Good. So you see, we have it at this point. And it's sticky until we go out of, that scope, right? So until we scroll out of, so probably you've seen a lot of designs using something like this, but maybe you might not understand it very well. Let's assume they want to show you a bunch of text. They want to show you a bunch of text. Something like, we have the P. So we have a bunch of text at the top, and the idea is to bring in. Let's bring in this item right within this. Okay. So if I refresh this, we have the lorem ipsum text, right in here. And, this item remains sticky even though the text has gone off already until we are leaving that scope, right? And when you're leaving that scope, it goes off with that scope. So which means if you apply this to the body or directly to the page, you can scroll while this item remains sticky in here, right? You can scroll while this item remains sticky in here. So in most cases, you are trying to implement a navigation menu, for example. Let us try to implement a navigation menu with this. So I am going to create a new file, and I'm showing you this because sometimes it can be confusing. So the HTML, we're going to create a quick nav. So I'm going to call this nav, right? And within the nav, I'm going to, so let's assume I have UL with LI, which is, like the menu items, right? So in here, within the UL as well, I have a logo, so let's say I have a logo, and this logo is basically a text in this case, right? I'm going to use H1, and I'll say I'll just say logo. All right, so we have the nav, and the nav has, this div and also the UL. So within the UL, we have menu 1, and we have menu 2. So I keep making the mistake of, bringing out this stuff, 2, 3, 4. All right. So what I'm going to do right now is to first, let's start by, taking off these items. So we're going to do that again. So we have the nav, and I'm going to say the nav is simply having like a background color of, let's say white. Okay. So, and let's say the main body style, has a background of black, and then it has a text color of white. Okay. So for the nav, we're going to set like a height, for 100 pixels, and then we have a width, of 100%. So this is basically going to run I need to open the navigation. Okay, so I'm sure that was what I created, right? So we have nav, like this. Okay, so we have that nav. So you can see we have that nav right now. The next thing I'm going to set for this nav, let's just put a very simple margin. I'm just going to put a margin of 3 EM, so we can, yeah. So that margin is not a good idea. So instead, I'm going to set let's set a width of 90%. Okay, so this is what we have. And I'm going to say margin 0 or so. So I'm just trying to implement something that will look like this, right? So that's what it looks like at this point in time. I'm also going to just say a margin top of 2 EM. Okay, so we can have something that doesn't work. And basically that is because of the margin 0 or 2, and I'm sure of that. Okay, so now we have something like this. You see we have the text, just right outside outside. So what I'm going to do instead, what I'm going to do right now is within the nav, I want to simply go ahead and style this nav. I'm going to say display of flex, and I'm going to say justify contents, space between, right? Then I'm also going to call the UL. So I'm simply going to say UL, and I'm going to remove it. So I'm going to remove the icons where I have, I think it's called the list style. I'm not sure, but let's see. So the list style is none. Okay. And then we have the color of okay, so let's see if what we're doing makes sense. Okay, so you see we have those list items, menu 1 to menu 4. Our text is still white. So what we're going to do to that text is we're going to say the nav, with the H1, which I believe that's what we use, has a color of black, right? Okay, so let's see if that is working. All right, so that is working. Now within the nav, we're also going to say align items. I'm going to make this center. So basically what that is going to do is, put this item in the center just like this. All right. So within the same nav, I am simply going to go ahead to say, okay, so I already have that here. So let's just say we have the display again of flex. We have the gap. Let's say we have a gap of 30 pixels each. So I'm going to take this off. So let's refresh. So you see what we have menu 1 to menu 4, right? Probably that space is not enough. So I'm going to say 40 pixels, and let's see what we have. Okay, so good. So we have menu 1 to menu 4. Maybe you want to adjust the the margin. So we can say margin 0, and we have 3 EM. If we refresh, so you see we have that 3 EM right here. This is supposed to be within the nav actually, so that it can apply no. Okay, so where am I wrong? Probably this should be a padding. So what I'm trying to do is to add this spacing, yeah, right here and right here. Okay, so now we've been able to build a very simple navigation menu, and let's try to make this sticky if that works. So let's try to make this sticky. I'm simply going to say position. So the problem is I did not actually create yeah, so I did not actually create that container that I expect to have, but let's try the top. I'm going to say 0px, and okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, so that works. So when we get to 0px, you see we're able to just make it sticky, and your scroll continues. And yeah, so you might want to ask yourself, okay, how can we continue to see that we're actually scrolling? So I'm simply going to say we have border radius right here. So let's just make this even more appealing. So we have 20px right here, which I feel is probably too much, but that's not our problem. So on the body, I am simply going to now make it obvious that this is actually becoming sticky. I'm going to create a very simple div with an image, but this div is going to have a class of container, and the image itself is going to just simply call a particular picture, right? So we're going to put a particular picture in here. Oh, okay. I think I have a better idea. Instead of wasting your time, wasting your time coding on coding live. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go back to the body style and I'm going to add a background, right? So I'm going to add a background URL, which I believe you understand, how I am doing this. So let's go to Unsplash. If you have any questions based on what I've done so far, please ask in the chat because I want to be able to answer a lot of questions from you before the end of this session. So ask as many questions as you want to ask. So we're simply going to search for Unsplash. This is taking, it's quite slow. Okay, so I'm going to simply, all right. Okay, so let's just search for something. Okay, so I am going to take this image that we're seeing here. So let's copy this. So let's copy image address. I believe that should work. Okay. I hope, I mean, I wish I saw, oh yeah, I think I like this landscape kind of image. So let us copy the image address this time around, and I'm going to simply paste this in here. So let's see what we have. Even though we're still going to have to make some adjustments to make this better, we're still going to, so we're going to make some adjustments. And that adjustment is simply, to set things like background repeat. I believe you know what I mean by background repeat. So we're going to say no repeats, no repeats. All right, and we're going to say background size, right? So I think we have background size. I'm going to set this to cover, not contain. Okay, so if we refresh this, now you see this is not good at all. Yeah, basically we're having that size because we set this to 100 and to 200. Let's just do 100 VH once again. Okay, so now we are unable to really get the effect of that scroll, right? That scroll effect. We're going to fix that. We still have time, so we're going to fix that right away. So let us drop some items, to make this better. Let's drop some items. Let's drop it. Okay, so let's refresh. All right. So yeah, this is not. We're not able to show this still. So what I'm going to do is instead is within the let's see. Okay, so I'm going to have a different div here. I'm going to set a class, a container, and I tried not to do this, but I'm going to simply, I'm not going to add anything in there, so I'm simply going to have like a container, and I'm going to set a height of 100 VH, right? And I'm going to set a background color of black, right? So the idea is, okay, so there's a problem, and basically I believe you know where the problem is coming from. So this particular item just is overriding what we already have, in here, because we don't have, basically because we don't have a text, if you get what I mean. So basically because we don't have a text, or we don't have some items that are, occupying the 100 VH height that we've created already, right? And I think I get that point. I understand why this is why we are having this kind of error. Basically, that's what I would call it. Some people are trying to join and they're complaining that the host is not allowing them to join. So please, someone should admit the people in the waiting room. Always check. What I'm going to do to fix this right now, instead of just calling this, instead of making this fill the entire space, I'm simply going to set like 400 px for the height, and let's see what we have. Okay, so now this is what we have. Let us try to fix that. Let us try to fix this. Okay, so now the problem is, how do we really fix this? So there are various ways to fix this. Of course, this is CSS, right? So there are various ways to fix this. But what I'm going to do is to simply, use a different approach right now. So I'm going to set, an header. So I'm going to say we have an header, taking up 600 px. So that's very correct. Using a background attachment fixed. But let's try to do this. So now that we have this, as our header, so if you set, so the problem is if you set the background attachment fixed, it means you're saying even though you stretch this to 200 or any size, you're still going to have that particular size. And I get that. But okay, so I was trying to see if we can do, if we can have like a different item taking up like okay, does this work? All right, so this works. Okay. So now one thing you see is that this particular item, and this was exactly the same thing I was showing you the other time, right? So this particular item is fixed up to the area where its container would elapse. And of course, where does the container elapse here? The container elapse, right, inside the header, which is what we created in here. So this is what I'm trying to show you, that if you make a mistake, right? If you make the mistake of, putting this in the wrong container, which I have done right now, you see that once it gets here, it would elapse. So I believe, Chris, Phoebe, you understand what I'm trying to do right now. So you have the header, you have this item within the header. Once it gets to this stage, you see what happens. This other item is able to, like collapse that item. Of course, you've seen some websites, where you have, you have like a very big picture, then you have some text showing up here. And while you scroll, you discover that that text is still there until the next item push that text away. So I believe you understand what I'm trying to explain to you, right? But if you don't, or maybe you've not seen a website that looks like that, yeah, so I believe we can probably search for some examples, but maybe some other time. So it's good to understand how the sticky works so that you can use this to make or to create a better web experience for your clients or for your personal project. So yeah, basically that is what I want to show you, and I believe we are not really trying to do a lot here. You can always work on something like this, make it even responsive to also adapt on mobile. And I think this is all I need to show you about the CSS positions. Another thing I wanted to explain is the JavaScript classes, ES6 classes, but you have a workshop session coming up very soon, or a class coming up very soon, and I think your instructor would be in a better position to handle that topic, and maybe I can go ahead and do some revision after that particular class. So if you have any question as regards what I've shown you right now, ask a question in the chat, and yeah, I would take your questions already. Okay, so ask your questions in the chat. I see we have 17 people. The participation today is really poor, but yeah. So for those of you that are here, ask your questions and let's answer them before. So we have roughly I think we have roughly about 20 minutes to take questions. So I tried as much as possible to make sure we cover these, items or these properties as fast as possible. Some of you joined late, by the way. So someone is saying, how do you make the sticky item stay in the end of the page or document? Oh yeah. So if you want to make the item stay, throughout the page, so let's do that. Let's do that on the navigation area right now. Let's do that on the navigation area. Personally, I can say you make sure that this item is not within this container, right? Make sure this item is not within this container. So if you don't have this item within the header container, it would definitely take the body as the parent, and this item will remain sticky even while we continue to scroll. Can you see that? So this item will remain sticky even if we have, let's say we have another session with a different color, it would continue to. Do you understand me, Cassie? So let's say we have blue. So if we have blue, Cassie, please let me know if you understand me so I can proceed. So we have blue right here as well. Okay. All right, good. Okay. So you see that if I continue to scroll, so that there was a bit of a problem here, and the problem was that I think we had a different style for our body with 100 VH. So probably need to take that off, right? So let's see if I refresh. What do we have now? So this continues to stay on the page down to the end of the page. All right. So thank you. Yeah. So if you have any other question, go ahead and drop your question so we can take that. go ahead and also this image just changed, and let's work with Chris' suggestion. So for the background, we're going to say background attachment, and we're going to make that fixed, right? And then we can go ahead and refresh. So right now that works perfectly. Okay, so yeah, so someone is saying, so just position sticky solves it. What do you mean? So just position sticky solves it. Are you referring to the navbar example we're giving here? Timothy, are you referring to the navbar example? If that's what you are referring to, yeah. So basically, you can use this, right? You can use this. Sometimes maybe you want to have like a different view on mobile. Then we'll start talking about responsiveness, working with media queries, and we're going to do that, very soon. I just did not want to, rush through too. I mean, I didn't want to go through. I didn't want to go, more than the position stuff. But yeah, if you're working with something like this, and maybe you want to make it more responsive. So can you see what is happening on my screen? You see that there's a bit of the menu and all that is. I mean, when it comes to being sticky, it would remain sticky, right? But you might say maybe on the mobile view, you simply want to you don't want like this spacing around the item. You just want to have like a fixed nav, right? And then you want this item to be responsive, which means it should show up under this other item, under the logo. I believe you should know how to fix this because I've given examples. Right now we're using display flex with space between. So basically what you would have to do is to change the flex direction, right? So when you change the flex direction, you make those other items hidden until you click a button. Of course, that's where you have to put in some JavaScript, or you can use CSS to say when you hover, this should happen. But JavaScript will be more optimal for that. So can we also use fixed to make the item sticky to the end of the page? Yeah, you can. So the major difference here is that this item is actually, the nav is actually scrollable until it gets to the point where you no longer want it to scroll. So that is the difference between sticky and fixed. So in order to explain that better, I think what I would rather do is okay. All right, so let's do it this way. I'm going to use the sticky and the fixed so that Emmanuel, so that you can see what I'm doing here. So I have the height and I have the top. I think I set some kind of padding initially. So I'm going to take off this padding. Instead, I'm going to just use, I think I would have just used top of 50. Maybe that would have worked. Okay. All right. So you see what is happening right now. Basically, this item is still sticky, but there's no it's not scrolling because that is the baseline that we set using top, right? So let's go back and leave this back at, yeah, I'm going to do it this way. And instead of using 3, I'm going to use, let's say 8. Let's see, refresh. Okay, this is not, okay. So yeah, I mean, even if I choose to use fixed, let me show you the difference. If I refresh this page, this item is still sticky, but you see, it did not really scroll down till it gets to that base, which is the body, right? It did not really scroll till it gets to that base. It's just fixed there, and then, no matter what happens, it doesn't move at all, right? So that's the difference between sticky and fixed, right? The difference basically is, sticky would always, move on with the, depending on your styling, of course, but it can actually flow with the page until it gets to the top of the page and becomes sticky there. So if you continue to move this, but remember, it also depends on how you set your parent container, right? So when you continue to scroll, it just remains there. But fixed is going to be there permanently, and no matter what happens, it's not going to scroll at all. So let's say we have this to be 100 px. I think this should work. So you see, it's still fixed in there. It's not moving at all. Yeah. So basically, that is the major difference I want you to understand about sticky and fixed. So let's take it back to what we have. And this is what we have. Okay. So I think I answered your question, Emmanuel. Do you have any other question? Go ahead and ask the questions, please. This is a simple, example, working with menus, working with flex. So I tried as much as possible to also reflect back on some of the things we've done in the past, and try to you can always optimize my style, right? Sometimes, sometimes when writing CSS, you try a lot of things, and sometimes you forget to remove some things you've tried. Like if I am building like, a real application, I would not prefer to work with the padding here. Instead, I would prefer to work with the top and optimize my styling, with the parent style, with the parent div, to ensure that, the top item would work properly. And as regards to absolutes, I think there's something that I probably did not explain well. When I mean well, probably in depth. So let's go ahead and implement something for the absolute item again. So let's assume we have a style, right? We have a style right here, and we'll have a parent. I'm going to do this again, and I say the parent has a height of 50. Okay, let's say 250, and the width of 250. Okay, and this has a position of relative. Then we have a child. Okay, and that should be parent, not pattern. So let's fix that. Okay, so for the child, we're also going to work with something similar, but this time around, we're going to just simply use 50, 50, absolute, and then we also have maybe border radius of 50 px to make this a circle. What I am going to do right now is let's start by having a div, and we're going to have the ID parent, right? So we have another div, and we have the ID child. So using ID here is basically because I'm using this selector, this CSS selector type. So now we have the parent and the child. I'm going to set the parent to have a background color of black once again, and then the child will have a background color of, okay, now that was a mistake. So I have this keyboard binding, where I just press a particular shortcut and that stuff pops out. I think I have to probably change that binding. So I have like yellow right here. So if I decide to open up this, I call it absolutes.html. This is what we have, right? This is what we have. So I'm going to show you something right now. I'm going to put this parent in the center. So basically, I'm going to set the body, and I'm going to say, and this is one of the ways I actually enjoy putting stuff in the center, right? I just say this item center. Okay, so this is currently in the center of my page. So what I'm going to do is, using the absolute item, you see, I don't have any, top or bottom. I can left, and I can use like minus 50 px. So this is going to, you see what just happened? This basically just came out of, the parent. This is, remember that this is the parent, right? And the parent is relative. Now we're using left of minus 50. What if we say minus 10, right? So see what happens. You are basically able to position, these items. You're basically able to, like overlap, this item on other items, if you want to, because of course, because you're using let's try 15. You're using absolute, so it's absolute, which means it's basically not on the screen. So you can overlap this item on any part. Sometimes some people might say, okay, if I want to position this item, let's just say left, so let's just use a position. Yeah, let's just use let's just move it to the left or move it to the right, stuff like that. It's sometimes better to work with the position, because I can simply just come down here to say, okay, bottom, make this, but make it minus 10 or minus 15 as well. So see what is going to happen right now. It's going to just position itself at this particular spot, right? And that is just one child. So let's assume now that we have 4 children basically. We have child 1, child 2, child 3, child 4, child 3, child 4, child 1. Okay, now we can also go ahead. Okay, another mistake again. So we have child 2, and that is really distracting. So we have child 2. This time around, we're going to say, instead of taking it to the left, let's take it to the right and the bottom as well. And let's change the color to something else. And when we refresh, you see what we have, right? Let's do something similar again. So now we're playing with positions, right? And it's fun, and it's easy, right? It's simple to do that. So so we'll use right, left, and let's use stop. This time around, let us change the color again. Let's refresh. So you see, I think that's, that should be child 3. Okay. All right, so you see, we have child 3, right? So we're basically just, playing around with positions right here. So instead of using this, let's go back to left, and now we have child 4 with a different color as well. So yeah, we're able to just play around with these stuffs and position items at the edge, right here. So yeah, it's quite nice if you learn how to how to optimize and play around with stuff like this. Put in your text, design something with CSS, right? There are so many things you can do with CSS, but of course you have to continue to practice. You have to practice regularly as well, so that you can master these things, positions. And you see, I was confused at some point, when the sticky wasn't working, until I remembered that it's basically because the parent container did not have enough space or enough size, to enable it to work. And when I mean space or size, I was talking about the direct parent of the sticky item in the first example. So I made a mistake there, and everything was working, fine. I mean, the code was right, but my the idea that I wanted to implement, was not working based on what I wrote, right? So I believe you get what I'm trying to explain, by showing you this item. To center this stuff, I simply use the display of grid, which is what I have right here. Display grid, place item center. You can also do that with flex, I believe so. You can have justify content center. Now, I don't know if this is going to work. Yeah, so this is working as well. Okay, what if I have a height of 100 VH so that this can sit properly in the center? Right, so that did not work. Okay, so that did not work, and I'm going to see, okay, so that works with place item center. What if I don't have to justify? Oh boy. All right, so yeah, play around with these stuffs, and please ask more questions. It's already 9:01. I think yeah, we usually have like the Q&A, but we have Q&A when I share materials with you to study. So now that I am here on this call, this session is basically not going to last till 10 p.m. Instead, I'm going to just allow the session get to 10 minutes past 9. So ask your questions within the next 8 minutes, and yeah, I would call it a night. Is anybody on this call joining? Is anybody on this call outside Nigeria? Let me know in the chat if you are joining. Okay, yeah, so someone raised, okay, all right. All right, so yeah, thanks for showing up. Thanks for being part of the session. And if you have any question as well, go ahead and ask a question so that we can resolve that right here. I believe, since no question is coming in, obviously, you understand some of these things. Yeah, so some of you made I should explain, how to use Git and GitHub and the other set of tools. I'm going to have a session, and that session will be a combined session for both the front-end engineers and the back-end engineers. I'll be explaining, each tool, Git, GitHub, and even GitHub Desktop, and I will show you how to use these tools, right? I'll show you how to, create your repository, add items to the repository, make commits, push your commits to GitHub, and yeah, share your code as well, and even have people collaborate with you. So we would have to. It's going to be a practical session, of course, a live session, and you can ask your questions, and we can try things out together on the call. Okay. So since we no longer have more questions, okay, I think Emmanuel is asking, is it a must we put the parents on relative before using the absolute? No, it's not. So when you don't put a parent, you end up, the absolute is going to pick the immediate parent, which is going to fall back to the body, right? Or maybe any other parent you have, So let's assume you plan to design a very simple card, right? And I don't think it's fun typing, coding while you're watching, because I believe I am probably too fast, right? I'm just trying to ensure that, you see what I'm doing. I'm going to share this with you after this session. But let's assume I try to create a card, and I want to have an image. I want to have an image show up here, and then some text at the bottom. If I make that image absolute when the card itself is not relative, that image is going to take the body as the absolute, as the relative parent, sorry. It's going to take the body as the relative parent, and it's going to go out of the scope of the body when I set things like top and left, you know? Yeah, so I would have loved to show an example, but I'll be very fast and you might end up not even understanding it. So probably we'll do that in a different session, or maybe you can watch. All right, so see what I want you to do, Emmanuel. Go back to the video where we implemented flex and grid, right? And then you will see what I'm trying to explain here. When we use flex and grid to implement a simple blog on YouTube, you will see what I'm trying to explain here. Someone should please share that video with him or you can just go down to YouTube and you probably see it there. You have a playlist, right? So you can just check the playlist, okay? All right, so thank you guys. Thank you very much. And have a wonderful night. Yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye. All right, so that time, I mean, this was intentional.